Our gospel reading is from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 9, beginning in verse 9. As Jesus was walking along, he saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax collection station. And he said to him, "Follow me." And he got up and followed him. As he sat at dinner in the house, many tax collectors and sinners came and were sitting with Jesus and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to the disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" But when he heard this, he said, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners." And while he was saying these things to them, suddenly a leader came in and knelt before him, saying, "My daughter has just died. Come and lay your hand on her, and she will live." And Jesus got up and followed him with his disciples. Then suddenly a woman who had been suffering from a flow of blood for 12 years came up behind him and touched the fringe of his cloak. For she was saying to herself, "If I only touch his cloak, I will be made well." Jesus turned, and seeing her, he said, "Take heart, daughter. Your faith has made you well." And the woman was made well from that moment. When Jesus came to the leader's house and saw the flute players and the crowd making a commotion, he said, "Go away, for the girl is not dead but sleeping." They laughed at him. But when the crowd had been put outside, he went in and took her by the hand, and the girl got up. And report of this spread throughout all the district. Holy wisdom, holy word.
Thanks be to God.
Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. It's kind of my takeaway verse from this text. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. Say it again. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. Today is a big day for a lot of reasons. I guess the elephant in the room is that today is my last day as pastor here at Beloved Community Presbyterian Church. It has been, part of me wants to say like the most meaningful part of my career, but I'm going to go a step farther and say that this has been maybe the most meaningful season of my life. I'm really grateful to all of you, and I really want you to know how deeply I love this place, how deeply I love all of you, and how confident I am that God has something else in store for this place. God has a purpose for this place. God is not done with this congregation, and I am really excited and hopeful for what comes next for you, even if I don't get to be the one that sees it in person. But I do want to leave you with a challenge. And that's just to hold those words from this passage really closely. That's how you do it. That's how we do the ministry of what God is doing in any place. But the ministry that God is doing here, the ministry that you are a part of here, the work, the joy, the hope, the community, the love, the sanctuary, the fellowship, the pursuit of peace and justice, let's see if I can remember the mission statement off the top of my head, right? The way that you go about being a community that encounters the God who transforms lives, that extends hope and sanctuary on your side, that seeks justice and peace in the world, and that sees and celebrates all of God's people. I got the thumbs up. I got that right. The way that you do that is you go and learn what this means. I desire mercy and not sacrifice. I was packing up just my things this week, as weird as that, an experience as that was, and all my books packed up, and then I was like, all right, I'm done. And then I looked at the wall, and I was like, oh, I haven't taken anything off the wall, and I need to figure out how to pack all these pictures and things. And one of the things that I keep on the wall is, I think I told you about it before, but it's this piece of needlepoint that was given to me by a woman on my care team when I was ordained. So a woman in the Maumee Valley Presbytery who was a chaplain who was on my care team, gave me this needlepoint. Scotland and Ireland, and when she was there, she would go to old cemeteries, because, I don't know if you know this, they have a lot of them that are very old, and she would find these crosses that were on gravestones, and there were Celtic crosses and things, and she would do little etchings of them, and then she would make needle points of those crosses, and at the bottom of that, she would always put an old Celtic blessing. And so the one that's at the bottom of mine is this really beautiful, tan and green kind of Celtic knot cross, and it says, "Let nothing disturb thee, let nothing affright thee. All things are passing. God never changes." And I look at that all the time, and I try and remember that all the time. And when I'm getting ready on Sunday mornings, that is one of the prayers that I say every Sunday morning. Let nothing disturb. I modernize it a little bit. Let nothing disturb you. Nothing. Right. All things are passing. God never changes. And I was struck by something as I was putting that away, and I was thinking about what God is doing here in this place. And I think what struck me is that we are in the middle of a season here and really across the world that is not really what any of us would choose for what the world is going through right now. But we are struck in the middle of a season that is characterized by fear and by anger and by xenophobia and by nationalism, and the kind of things that Lillian told us about happened at Bright Heights Pride yesterday. It has crept into governments across the world and populaces across the world and churches all across the world. And this is a really difficult moment to try and be the people of God and to try and speak clearly what it means for us to be disciples of Christ and the body of Christ in the world. And I cannot say that it won't stay a mess before it gets better. But I can confidently say, all things are passing. And even this season will pass. Hopefully, tomorrow. but all things are passing. So let nothing disturb you. Let nothing affright you. All things are passing. But God never changes. And when this season passes into something new, when we come to a new moment, it won't happen in a way that we can just say, all right, everything is done, let's just move forward. Although we'll try and do that, but that doesn't work. There's a passage in 2 Corinthians that I think about a lot, and we've used it a lot as our assurance of pardon, but it's that in Christ, God was reconciling the world to God's Son, not counting our trespasses against us, but entrusting us with the message of reconciliation. That ministry of reconciliation, that ministry of healing, is an active and intentional thing. And it requires that we go and learn what it means to desire mercy and not sacrifice. We are going to have to learn how to really figure out how to not just be merciful or choose mercy over sacrifice, but we're going to have to learn how to live together. We are going to have to learn how to forgive and how to move forward as a people. And that doesn't just happen right away. It is intentional. And it requires that we be intentional about living out the love that God has poured out into this world and continues to pour out into this world and will never stop pouring out into this world. All things may be passing, but God never changes. The love of God never changes. And in new moments, and in new situations, and in new times when we have to figure out how to live together and forgive and move forward and heal, it requires that we are intentional about learning what it means to follow Christ in this moment. I said it last week, but it is worth repeating. We are called to be disciples, and we We're called to make disciples. Disciples, first and foremost, are students. We are meant to constantly be learning who God is. We are meant to constantly be learning what God is doing in this moment. And we are constantly meant to be learning what it means in this moment, in this time and place, to follow God in Christ, who came to serve rather than to be served, and to give his life as a ransom for many. What it means to follow Christ, who desires mercy, not sacrifice. Go and learn what it means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. Because we're learning that and continually learning that. And when we figure out we learned it, go and learn it again. And then when we got that one, go and learn it again, right? Like that continual process of go and learn what it means. Like that is my charge to you. I think that's also incredibly important for us to remember right now, not just because tomorrow things change for me and for everyone, yeah, I guess. But one of the other things that makes today a big day is that today is Jubilee Sunday. And yes, that is a feast day that we made up. But sometimes those are the best ones. When the idea of Jubilee emerges in Scripture, it is typically a whole year of intention. It is a season where debts are forgiven, where slaves are freed, where hungry people are fed by the community, where land that was typically farmed was given the chance to rest and recover, where people worshipped and celebrated. And the core idea of it was that over time, we naturally drift away from God, from who God calls us to be, and how we're meant to live together. And we find ourselves in seasons that are less than ideal, where we get caught up in greed or power or isolationism or any of those things that are happening all over the world, that these seasons come. And that's why we have seasons of Jubilee, is that in order to heal, in order to move forward, we need those intentional movements back to who God calls us to be. Those intentional movements back to what it means to live together. Those intentional movements of forgiveness and of rest and of reconciliation, so that we can return to our priorities, so that we can, again, learn what it means to be the people of God together. So this is the season of Jubilee, and this is a time when we are meant, when we are choosing. Again, we made this up. But this is a time when we are choosing to go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. When we encounter the text this morning, Jesus is calling his disciples. And he calls Matthew, the tax collector. And they go to a party. And at that party, there are tax collectors and sinners and all kinds of people that the Pharisees are not particularly pleased with. There is a disparate group of, what did I say? A disparate group of... quirky individuals who have shown up at this event. And the Pharisees are fully not impressed by it. And there is so much stuff in this text that we could dig into. But the thing that strikes me most is that when the Pharisees start to question and say, why does your teacher welcome sinners and eat with them? He turns to them and he quotes this line, go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. That comes from Hosea, chapter 6 of Hosea. Go and learn what it means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. And in the context of Hosea, it was sort of a poetic oracle, right? Judah and Israel, the two kingdoms, had consistently been falling short of living out the covenant of God's love. And so they keep making the mistake of confusing being religious for the true call. To live and love in the full presence of God. To let the embrace of what God was blessing, what God was doing in the world, and the embrace of that covenant be their guiding principle. And so God's mercy is coming out in this, and God's frustration is coming out, and God says, I desire mercy, not sacrifice. I desire the knowledge of God and not burnt offerings. And so this is what Jesus says to the Pharisees. And we see this all play out almost immediately. A leader comes to him, and his daughter has just died. And Jesus is called upon to help her. And so as he's traveling, this woman who has been ill for 12 years, this translation says that she had a flow of blood for 12 years. Other translations say that she had a hemorrhage for 12 years. She had been bleeding. 12 years is a long time. I am not a person with a uterus, and so I can't say that I have experienced the discomfort of bleeding for a week, let alone for 12 years. And she says, if I could just touch the hem of his robe, I could be healed. And so she, as he's walking through the crowd, she just reaches out. She doesn't grab him, right? It's not like she grabs his arm or pulls him aside or anything. She just reaches out and touches the hem of his robe. And he turns to her. And instead of being angry or anything like that, he says, your faith has made you well. He shows her mercy. And then in his steadfast love, still goes on to heal the girl. And I don't want to undersell either one of those miracles, because those are big, act of God miracles. But this is also a moment, at that moment, when Jesus utters those words from Hosea. He's not actually on his way to go heal, right? Like, it's not like he's like, all right, I'm on the door to go do some miracles, so you should learn what it means to desire mercy, not sacrifice. This isn't one of those moments where he's being called out for healing on the Sabbath, or generally breaking some religious rule to do a big act of God. He's at a party when he says these words, right? He's eating with tax collectors and sinners and a disparate group of quirky people. They gather around the table, and that's who Jesus is with. And when the Pharisees come in and they are not impressed by this disparate group of quirky people that Jesus has surrounded himself with, Jesus says to them, go and learn what it means. I mean, you know the stories of Hosea, so go and pay attention to them. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. And this is the moment when they're sent away, when Jesus shows who he really is. Not by the big act of God miracles, but by that really small miracle of just staying at the party to eat with these people, to see and celebrate the image of God in these neighbors who had come to the table. And it's not typically something that we would say, like, I follow Jesus because one time he went to a party and then ate with some weirdos, right? It's more likely that if somebody came up to you on the street and said, tell me about Jesus, you're much more likely to, tell the big stories. There's eating of the 5,000, the walking on water, the calming of the waves, the healing of the sick. Easter is a pretty good example of a good story. We would tell the story of how we have encountered Christ and how that has connected us to the everlasting life and love that God continues to pour out in the world. We might talk about good news to the poor and healing to the sick and recovery of sight to the blind and freedom to the oppressed, at least to the prisoners. We might share some things from the Sermon on the Mount, but probably none of us would say, one time we went to a party. And that party happened to be thrown by a bunch of rich people that everyone hated. And then a bunch of other people that people really didn't like showed up at the party. And there were probably dancers and general lavishness, because that's the kind of thing that happens at these parties. And then he got called out for being there. And then he told them to relax and learn what it means to be merciful. But maybe we should. Maybe that should be the kind of story that we tell. We follow God, who came into the world, sat down at a table with a disparate group of quirky people. Because they bore the image of God. We follow a God who has called us again and again not to just get caught up in what the right habits, what the religious practices are. But God has called us to desire mercy and not sacrifice. We follow a God who came into the world to be God with us, calls us to share in that ministry of reconciliation. That tells us something really beautiful about who God is. So in this moment, as you prepare to step into a new season, go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. And then, when things change in this new season, go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. And then again, sometime later, go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice.